Good late afternoon, everyone. I can't say evening because it's not even close to setting. My name is Paul Davis, and I'm a curator of collections here at the Menil. And I'd like to welcome all of you to this evening's talk, or conversation, and the reception for Mapa Wiya, Your Map's Not Needed, Aboriginal Australian Art from the Fondation Opale. If I could just take a moment and silence your cell phones for me, I would really appreciate that. And while you're doing that, I just would like to say thank you to the tremendous amount of support that corporations and the community have provided for this exhibition. Major funding for the exhibition was provided by the Anchorage Foundation of Texas, BHP, Olivia and Peter Farrell, George and Mary Josephine Hammond Foundation, and Melza and Ted Barr. Additional support comes from the United Airlines, Henrietta Alexander. Sorry, this is really loud. Is it okay out there? Nana Booker and David Lau, Booker Lau Gallery, Claire Castlemont and Michael Metz, the Robert J. Kleberg and Helen C. Kleberg Foundation, the Australian government via the Embassy of Australia in Washington, D.C., and the Australian Consulate General in Houston, Mark Walrow and Melanie Gray, Susan Deal Booth, Cindy and David Finch, Linda and George Kelly, Adelaide de Menil, Susan and Francois de Menil, Francie Neely, Marilyn Oshman, Bill Stewart, the Taub Foundation and Marcy Taub Wessel, the Australian American Chamber of Commerce of Houston, Salon 94, and last but not least, of course, is the City of Houston. So thank you all to all your support, and we greatly appreciate that. And I'd like to also introduce this evening's speakers and panelists. To my left is Georges Petitjean. He is the curator for the Collection Bérengère Primat. And he's also the former curator of the Museum for Contemporary Aboriginal Art in Utrecht in the Netherlands. And then to his left is Sally Scales, who's become a dear friend over these last couple of days. And she wears many, many hats, all of them important, sometimes simultaneously. And she's an extremely accomplished today. Can I say this? Is it okay? Today is her birthday. She is the spokesman for the AP Wilands Art Center, and she is the current chair of the AP Wilands Executive Boards. And then immediately to her left is Teresa Baker, who is one of the amazing artists that are part of this wonderful exhibition. Her painting is one of the collaborative paintings that she executed with her grandmother, Marinka Baker, and her sister, Connie Tunkin. And it features on the cover of the exhibition gallery guide. So with that, I think we should probably begin so we don't run too late, because we have an amazing opening reception for you. David Williams will be playing the Yidaki, or the didgeridoo, this evening as part of the opening festivities for the exhibition. So with that, why don't we begin with a conversation of Qu'est-ce que c'est la Fondation Opale?
Sorry, Paul, I'm not going to answer you in French. I know that you would love me to, but you'll have to practice with someone else another time. What is the Fondation Opale? It's a foundation for the arts that is entirely dedicated to indigenous Australian art. It's a very recent foundation. It only started a little bit more than a year ago. So it is absolutely wonderful that already now the artworks that are the basis of the Fondation Opale are here on display in the Menil collection. How it started is the concourse of circumstances. Bérengère Primat, the founder, has been collecting Aboriginal art for over 15 years. her engagement, yes, here we see a picture of Bérangère with her daughter, Manon, taken in 2009 in Alice Springs with the artist Gloria Pettiari. So Bérangère has had a very strong commitment, very strong engagement with Aboriginal art and Aboriginal artists. So the people that are behind the art, so it's not only about the art, it is also about the people that are behind the art and the culture that is the basis of the art. In 2016, I was just finishing my job as a curator of the only museum for contemporary Aboriginal art in Europe. That was the museum in Utrecht. Bérangère asked me to get a look at her collection. She initially thought, asked my advice about the collection. I thought immediately that it was a very, very strong collection. Then, by coincidence, a foundation called the Fondation Pierre Arnaud, very close to where Bérangère was living, about 4 or 5 miles, was interested in doing an exhibition of Aboriginal art based on her collection. That was Territoire du Rêve, Country of the Dreaming. The catalogue you can find in the bookshop opposite here. When the exhibition was on, towards the end, it became clear that the Fondation Pierre Arnaud was going to stop its activities. So all of a sudden, a beautiful building, and that was a building that we saw in the first image, became available, only 4 or 5 miles further from where Bérangère lived. So it was coincidence after coincidence after coincidence, and when there are so many coincidences in a row, it's not longer a coincidence, it is something that has to be. And
so the show that is currently up at the Fondation Opale is the Before the Time Began.
Before Time Began, yeah.
And so this is now a program that is part of the Fondation Opale, the celebration of...
Before Time Began is the first major exhibition of Aboriginal art at the Fondation Opale, so it can be seen as the real launch of the Fondation Opale. And the opening was in June 2019, so only a few months ago.
What's that, Sally?
Yeah, it was only a few months ago. I had the pleasure of taking 3 of our artists over from the APY lands, Mrs. Norris, Numrity Burton and Tuppy Goodwin, who had such a ball, who then was talking about where next they want to go as artists, because now Bérangère and the Fondation Opale has opened the doors for all those Aboriginal artists, especially in Central Australia. But they're like, okay, this door's open, where else? Well, Houston.
Well, and so that brings us to sort of the exhibition that's at the Fondation Opale right now, and the different projects that were involved with creating this exhibition. So I know we were talking about this earlier, but this wonderful installation is essentially, how many spears?
This one had 1,500 spears. 1,500
spears. So 1,500 kulata.
Yeah. So the Kulata Juta project was started. It's a really amazing project. It was started by these senior men who were informed by an organisation that they weren't going to buy any more spears, that they weren't going to collect anything, and that they needed to stop. And so all of those men said, well, no, this is our tradition, this is something really important to our way of life, this is a teaching mechanism for our kids, and that's fine, we don't need to send it to you, we'll just do it ourselves. And so the first installation of Kulata Juta had 200 spears hanging down from the ceiling. The second one was 350 in a garden, in a circle at a governor's house, which was talking about how art protects culture, and whether it's the bark, whether it's canvas, or whether it's installations like this, you're only sort of seeing the top layer. You're only seeing the small, the top tip of the iceberg that the artist will allow you to see, that there's more beneath the canvas, that there's more that is sacred for the artist. And then it was...
So why spears? Why of the different objects that you could use?
Well, it was the men. The men wanted to, and it's a tool that we've had since time began, and especially with this project, the kupi kupi, which is the willy willy, the sort of, I suppose, what, hurricanes?
Small.
Small hurricane.
It's the right place.
What was amazing about it, it's literally every single man did one from the APY lands, and they did it. I don't know the full intricacies of it. I don't have the gender for that, but it was the process of taking out the younger generations to get the particular wood, to bending it like after they sort of charcoal it, to getting the right hook, all of that. It was a real cross-generational teaching as well.
Go ahead.
Indeed, it forms the heart of the exhibition. The exhibition itself shows artwork from, as well, the early 70s, some of the works that were made in the beginning of the art movement, up to the very last works that were made in 2018. The Kulatachuta, of course, is one of them, but also two major canvases, one of which we see here. And I think.
And these are huge collaborative paintings.
Yes, yeah. They are only, and Sally would know more about it. There are only a few made, and the ones that were made are in national museums in Australia. So it's not only the only ones that are overseas, but it are.
The only other two massive collaborative pieces are in the Art Gallery of South Australia. And that's talking. So the women's piece, which is what you see up there, had 24 women. 24, pretty sure. Yeah. Yeah. So. Can
you see?
Teresa's just saying that she's really happy to be here with everyone. So we had our special friend Berenger come over for when we did the painting, and all the women got together, and all the little intricate jukurpa, the drawings, the stories that all the ladies done, it's all been passed through generations and been given by grandparents. Min ma joda banya jungore amono wang keng banya.
Ngana na jungurung bay, min ma ko joda jungurung bay, ngana na jungu palyal bay, ngana na wang kara kolel bay cukur bay ajaji ngana na palyal ko.
Mono pampa ko jarang ko nyana.
Palum janam cukur ba mono, ngai ko kulo cukur ba, ngana na jungu ko.
So all the women got together. There was a big discussion, as women do. We like to have a talk through everything first. So it was a lot of talking, what was going to happen first, what stories was going to be put down, making sure everyone had their own spaces as well.
Ngai ko are pulga pokola ngi. Ngai malpa ko are palo.
Me banyo papa jo jara jara wang ka palo nyanda.
Palo to abrun ba la nunga namba.
Ka gono.
Ka ngai ko are pulga pokola ngi. Malpa ngai ko paranjinya. Chancun mana ni palo nyakolo. Thank you. Nyuntunga namba ko are to abrun ba la no. Well, when we go around, go jago. Can I thank you, man?
What Teresa is saying is, when all the women were sitting and doing that, and having Berenger there, and then going and seeing it, and that this project in particular just opened the opportunity up for a lot of the APY artists, and that we could then have that exposure that we don't get a lot of, and to have someone who is as earnest and as wonderful as Beranger and the Fondation Opale has just been incredible. So, Teresa just wants to thank her very good friend. And Teresa went over to Switzerland when it was very, very cold.
Well, we returned to some of those aspects of this painting later with the film that the Fondation Opale made during the process of it. But so maybe we should turn to the exhibition and the work that's here at the Menil, that's from the Fondation Opale, and some of the work that's really was informative for me was Kunmanara Williams' work, in which he incorporates a lot of these words and phrases that are in the Pitjantjatjara language. We were talking about this in the gallery the other day about like how they're from the land rights songs, the protests, and then you played one of the songs for us.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm not singing it.
Oh.
No French and no singing.
I can't get anybody to do anything around.
I came all the way here. You got me to do that.
That's true.
I would urge everyone to go across the road and get Mr. Williams' book. It's there in your beautiful bookshop. And it talks about his life with his activism, his artistry, his leadership. And this is a wonderful, wonderful man who we unfortunately lost earlier this year. The Larrakitj installation, which we saw a bit of, Mr. Williams was instrumental in doing that as well. And the Kullara that sits on every piece of his, except the previous photo that we just saw, has a Kullara to hang it as a rod instead of a normal rod. So the paintings he does are on mail bags. So in Central Australia, we don't have the FedEx truck come through. We have a plane, so it's a mail plane which has all of the letters, all of that sort of stuff. It also has like cash for the general store. All of that sort of comes through. And I think he just sort of kept acquiring the mail bags, Mr. Williams. And because it says, it's an offence to draw or damage these mail bags, this is Australian property. And he was like, well, this is Australia, this is my home. You've destroyed it without sort of my say-so. It's never been conquered. And being a real political man, and the fact that this is his home and Aboriginal people know the right way to look after it. So
Yeah. For me, the mailbag is such a wonderful metaphor because it's things that communicate ideas across long distances. And then on top of that, he's writing the Chukupa.
Yeah, he's writing Chukupa, and also what he's writing pretty much on every sort of piece is he's writing Kulila, which is listen. So it's asking people to listen to what he's saying and hear, not just him, but also hear the Indigenous voices.
Mm-hmm. Can you explain what Chukupa is for? I know you don't like the dreaming.
Yes. Chukupa is, so when people say dream time or dreaming stories, I just feel that is so small and insignificant to what it truly means for Indigenous people. Our Chukupa is our word for law. It's our connection country. It's our culture. It's the family lineage. It's our ancestral beings. It's, for us, we talk about how our land, we're on country we sort of heal and all of that sort of stuff, but our country is an extension of ourselves. And I always say that the artists, what they're depicting on either all the different mediums is actually an extension of them and their country. Mm-hmm. And it's all of the one. It's sort of like a rope, it's all entwined into making the one strand of a soul. So that's why I think dreaming or dream time is it just seems a little bit more made up.
Yeah.
It's like you can brush it away and pretend it's not significant, it's not real.
It's a bad translation of a word that basically can't be translated. Huh?
Yeah.
So.
I mean, we borrow words from French. Why can't we borrow words from Pitjantjatjara people?
Well, it has multiple names too. It exists in differently.
Central Australia, it's all the same. Jukurpa.
True.
Yeah, it's spelled slightly differently.
Yeah. So I think we'll go back in time a little bit and talk about how these paintings that we have on exhibit here relate to the early 1970s and the late 60s, and sort of the history of Australia and the development of contemporary art at Papunya in 1971.
Yeah, and it's important, I think, to mention in the exhibition you will see art from 5 different regions: the desert regions, the Tiwi Islands, Arnhem Land, the Kimberley, and I think it might be only 4.
Central Kimberley, Arnhem Land, and South Australia.
Yeah. So
Western Central.
and that's each of these.
Are you following all that? Those cardinal directions. So there are different regions represented in the exhibition.
Yes, and each region has its own art history. Mm-hmm. So in the case of Papunya, and I'll let you talk, it started in 1971. That's mostly generally perceived as the beginning of the painting movement in the central and western deserts. And you can't see that without looking at the social context, the social economical context. We can't forget that Aboriginal people up until 1967 didn't have any rights in Australia. So in 1967 there was a referendum, after which Aboriginal people gradually could claim, after a long time, claim their territories back. But so before 1967, it basically meant that Aboriginal people didn't have any rights at all, so that the Australian government could do whatever they wanted with Aboriginal people. And just behind this wall is a picture by, it's a collaborative work by Larrakitj artists, people, the so-called Spinifex people. Their story is quite telling, because in the 1950s and 60s, on their country, on their land, the British and Australian governments carried out atomic tests. So it is only in the 1990s that they were slowly able to return to their lands, that they had forcibly had to leave. So you can't see the start of the movement in 1971 apart from these social changes in
the history
society.
Of Australia.
Yeah, absolutely.
The social history of Australia.
Intrinsically connected to the history of Australia. And it started with a fresco, with a wall painting on the little community of Papunya, where at some stage some 1,000 people from 5 different language groups were living together in quite miserable circumstances. And so it's quite symbolic to have a painting on the wall of a school. The school, of course, which is the place where young Aboriginal people go to learn English, to learn basic and
be assimilated into
exactly.
So
that wall painting was also a warning: don't leave your own culture behind. Don't forget your own stories. And that's what will ultimately make you strong. But don't leave that behind.
And the person who was the Australian who was working out there was Jeffrey Barden, who you see here. He was an art educator and provided some of the first materials for these sort of pioneering Aboriginal elders to paint on boards and also on paper and draw on paper. And you see some of them here standing next to the Chala Chukupra.
In the exhibition, there are 3 paintings from the early 70s, from 1971. So from a group of about 30 men took up brushes and started initially painting on every kind of material that they could find, working materials, building materials, and the movement grew from there, and actually still alive and kicking.
And one of the most powerful paintings in the exhibition is actually by I might consider him a second generation from this school. He was at Papunya, but he was secondary in stature or in status to the elderly men who were working with Jeffrey Barden at the time. But he studied with them, and Rani Champanjipa's paintings are now, they're exquisite examples of what might look like abstraction, but actually representations of a very specific place and specific things. This one representing Wilkinkara or Lake Mackay, which spans the border between Northern Territory and Western Australia, which is his homeland, where he's from. But that's actually not where he was. He was actually further east at Papunya, closer to Alice Springs. And so it's a wonderful gesture in terms of memory of place and the embodiment of place that Ronnie is evoking here with this painting. And then to what George was talking about earlier, this is that amazing Spinifex painting that you might have not seen because it's on the other side of this wall. But it's an incredible painting of 9 different men from the Spinifex region. And I know you kind of touched on this a little bit, but this is the region where Australia was doing the nuclear testing.
Yes. Yeah.
And seriously, so when you think about the importance of land and country to Aboriginal peoples and the destruction that nuclear testing does to that land, there's a significant scar. And I think this is a way of telling the story and healing.
And it's even more because it's also not this painting in particular, but the first collaborative canvases that have been made by the Ngangajara people, the Spinifex people, were used in court cases to claim the land back in several laws, Australian law cases. It was required that Aboriginal people could prove an unshattered link with country. So Aboriginal people didn't have writing, but did have do have a very rich culture of oral culture with ceremony and so on. So collaborative canvases made by several members of a community were used as material witness, material proof of that unshattered link between the people that lived on the land or that they had to leave behind and the land itself. So when you enter the exhibition, apart from being beautiful pictures, which they absolutely are, masterful works of art, they do also have a political dimension, and I think that Sally would agree.
There's some very, with the paintings that you'll see in this collection as well, and no doubt that there's been political statements to the Australian government being done on petitions where you've got the Yirrkala bark petition, which was signed by the East Island man mob, talking about getting treaties and all of that sort of stuff. And one of the many hats that I wear is I'm in the leadership team for constitutional reform in Australia, and that is a petition signed by 250 leaders from Australia on a canvas, and it's called the Uluru Statement from the Heart. So there's no doubt about it that painting and politics goes hand in hand.
You also mentioned something really special, or really interesting about this painting in reference to the painting that Teresa had worked on with her grandmother, and the differences in terms of men and women working together. I think it's fun.
Well, this one you can totally see where the distinctive styles of the artist really comes into play. Whereas when you have a look at Karneen, Teresa and Marinka's one, it's more fluid. As I said, women talk to each other.
And men are just territorial.
Yes,
Yeah.
we know this. So you can see. And look, you'll see in the video of the Women's Collaborative, there was lots of laughter, there was lots of singing, there was women having a ball, there was a little bit of a territorial, we gave a lot of space and agency to the senior artists. So my grandma, who's now 97, she was the main ones. Her and Uncle Curtis, and Betty Muffler did their very distinct style, which they've earned the right to do. But yeah, you can totally, you can see where Lawrence's is, you can see where Fred Grant's is. Really comes across. I mean, you've got Fred Grant on the bottom there, in the bottom left-hand side, which then you'll see when you go around the corner as well.
It's just funny because the titles, isn't it translated as working together?
We're working together. Working together, but separately.
So in terms of senior artists coming from a different region in the northern area of Australia, from Arnhem Land, John Marungil is one of the most, I think, important artists coming from that region.
He's one of the most important Australian artists. Aboriginal or not Aboriginal, he's one of the most Australian.
He's just an important artist, period.
Artists,
I like that.
Period.
Yeah.
And he had many retrospectives in the past, and one was in 2005 at Tingali Museum in Basel, so in the Museum of Contemporary Art, which traveled afterwards to the Sprengel Museum in Hanover, so in places for modern art, for contemporary art, not ethnographic museums.
But so what makes his work so unique or special or different?
Well, there are many things to be said about John Marungil's work. So but
I mean, I have an idea.
I would say he started working in the late 70s. So he's still working today, and many of the things that for which you would. Which you find also with successful European Western artists, is a continuous innovation in his work. He continuously innovates himself, but also tradition. While he continues on tradition, while the subjects of his paintings are very strongly anchored in country, in ceremonial life, at the same time, he continuously reinvents visual manners of visually representing ceremony or country in a very powerful manner. And in the case of John Marungil, his work was already shown in 1989 at the Centre Pompidou in the very famous exhibition Magicien de la Terre. But it's also, as with the very best artworks from all around the world by artists from Africa, from Asia, and so on. It speaks to all people, and I think here there are very powerful pictures. One of the strategies that he uses to construct these powerful pictures is RARC, the cross-hatching,
which makes up these different segments here.
Yeah.
So it's hard to see in the slide, but these little segments are actually single paintbrush strokes that are crossed and then cross-hatching, essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And his work here, it's contemporary, it's ancient. It tells about stories and knowledge that goes back some thousands, if not 10,000s of years. It speaks about, it is relevant in this age, so it's,
Well, for me, it's also, I mean, having met him when in Virginia, it was incredible to see these images of him actually making the bark paintings and working with the bark, handling it over these fires to flatten it and temper it. I mean, that's not easy labor.
No,
sure.
it's
So these, if I understand it correctly, are peeled off the trunk of the tree,
Yes, yep.
and then
Flattened over a fire, indeed, and then so it is an organic material, and in a certain sense, you could say that the materials that he uses are the country itself, are bark from trees from the land, and also the ochre pigments, the natural pigments that he used, come from the lands.
Do you see him doing here? And he's painting on a flat white ground. Yeah. One of the really other important artists in the exhibition is Warren Peary.
Yep.
And he is one of the group that came out of the Central Desert in 1984. And he recently had this amazing show and has been included in Documenta. So he's one of the really important artists. And his paintings are they're alive. They oscillate in front of you, and they're extremely powerful. So there's much to be said, but I also know we're pushing time. So I want to make sure we get to everything. And then there are also these examples of the riji or lonka shells from the Kimberley region that are, seductive and gorgeous objects, but also functioned as currency.
Yeah, they
and
tell
clothing.
also about connections between the coasts and Central Australia, because shells, you're talking about the sea, in this case the region of Port Hedland, the Kimberley coast, and these shells found their way many thousands of miles up until Central Australia. And the next image, I think, are
the Kimberley.
Yeah.
Are also from the Kimberley. These are the wajina that are on view in the first gallery in the exhibition. And these represent, wajina are water spirits, or water phenomena, water-related phenomena.
Anthropomorphic renditions of climatological conditions, cumulus clouds, rain, and the rain you can clearly see on the body. So they are, and they typically don't have a mouth, because if they would have a mouth, it would rain incessantly, without stopping incessantly.
So to the earlier point that the contemporary art movement came out of the 1970s. There's a lot more people here than I thought there were. I just turned around. The rock paintings go back several tens of thousands of years. And so this is an art that is not only new, but it's also old, extremely old, and well worn into the land and the country that it's from.
Well, artists always talk about how their original and first art centre are the caves. Mm-hmm. You know, the modern art centres, the buildings where they can go and do their, paintings, or whether it's on the canvas or making kulara, that's only recent. The original and the first is always going to be the caves.
Caves, and the land itself. Mm. And the body.
Yes.
Yeah. So maybe Sally, you and Teresa can talk about the Tungapalia Art Center and the painting that is a collaborative painting.
Nga painting ngayon palanda ka cukur ba nga palungan ni minma an kunja munu minma ko ngura pala ni nanja fulpi onu.
There we go. So this is the painting that Teresa did with her grandmother and her sister, and it's about a woman who lives in a cave but underground, and it's a real place not far from Kunpi.
Ka pana cukur punya balong ngarani minma balong ngulo urjapakanda wating balunya wana nengka balong ngulo urjapakan munu balong ngura pala kumpira nyeneng cave ongo.
And more banya nya tarbanjaku warang podonga buera. And because it was a woman who was running away from a man, and she went into this cave. It's actually a really not shallow, but a really small cave. So you can't actually stand up. I can stand quite fine because I'm short. But like for my brother and everything, they have to hunch over if they're in there because it's a woman's space.
Ka panyangan na nende yal nguren da ko muno yal jan kun da ko muno ka ngana na ngayolo an ko pe muno ngayolo tuklaro wel kan ko pe kul pe palla panyangan na kurundo muno main pa ko na kanyini panya map ngana na yal an ko muno yal ngurel ko.
So Teresa's saying that to go to the site where this painting is depicting, as custodians of that particular place, her and her family, they know it instinctively. They feel where it is. For a visitor who's going there, you would just completely walk past it. Like I even get confused when I try and find it because it's not my song line. How long did 1 week in 1 week. So the women did this in 1 week, this canvas at Junggapalya. And Junggapalya is actually made out of 2 small communities, which has got a population of how many? So one little tiny community has about 50 people, the other has maybe 30. So it's an art centre that services, you would have, I would say, at least 20 artists working there. Very senior old men to some young artists. There they are.
Kanya aja panya cukur ba, nganamba cukur ba muno, nganamba ngora.
Nyundo.
Nganamba kulenja muno, nganamba kalja, nganana kurun do kanyini, nyabalun cukur nyabalun.
And kunpo. And kunpo kanyini. So Teresa is talking about how this painting and everything she makes, it's part of her country, it's her, it's keeping culture strong. Everything we're doing is about keeping culture strong. Palya. Palya is our word for good. All good.
So we're good, Palya?
Palya.
Okay. So I think to conclude tonight's panel conversation, George and I thought it would be good to show you the film that the Fondation Opale has put together as part of the preparation for Before Time Began, and it's of the women working on this very large canvas. So I'll just play it and.
This is the APY lands, and that's Armada community.
Canvas pang kapala ni. Mana betul kapala kapi jokola. Mai joda. Puri joda ngana ninti ni wal kaja manu ngana na. Jokur pa jokori joda ko jona ni. Nyangala di pala ngayon. Pulka popular yung ngayon kulin ni ganyan. Kuwari nga nang bajukor bajuda. Min majudango. Jukor walcha. Kati ni mo jungol ni nga nang pagkantas pangkaya walka nyangang ka pulkaring ko jaw. Kajukor nga nang pulkaring nga ni jungoring ko lang.
I didn't do that one. So I think we have a...
So if you're ever in Europe, go to Lens, go to Fondation Opale and go and see that painting.
So I think maybe we have a few minutes for a couple questions, if anybody has any. If not, okay, we can...
Last opportunity, come on.
No?
Come on, someone's got to have a question.
Well, if there are no questions, then we're off the hook.
Well,
And
they're going to come and ask me afterwards.
that's true. That's
you
true.
know, so it's better to do it now.
It's true.
Ah, there we go. Got a winner. It's an acrylic-based paint. Because we find that that's a lot more durable when we have to roll it, and because it's the APY lands is very similar to Houston in its heat, but we just don't have the humidity, which is really nice. But the acrylic paint is a lot more when we have to bend the canvas. Yeah. The big marks are the big for this.
I can go back.
For the big circles. No, the collaborative one.
I have to go all the way back, sorry.
Yes, the big marks are, and then the little bits it's just filled in. Yeah. So the big circle up on the very top left-hand corner is actually done by this artist Yarrachi Young, and then the looped circles where Mrs. Burton, Numeri Burton standing, they were done by the senior women. Behind Tuppy Goodwin, which is a lady on the left, was done by Barbara Moore. So the big broad strokes are done, and then it's all filled in after. But yeah, it was all done. All the women spoke about what they wanted and how they, all went through. Yeah. Hi, Michelle.
Can you explain how Teresa chose, or Mumu chose the rainbow serpent and clay and how they choose what they choose and what it represents?
Never balawang kay nyundo jokot panya nyundo panya wang kabay nyundo panya nyar balado nyundo jokot panya panya
Sanya painting pala ni. Cukur punya ngayon pala ni niya ba? Like ngayon painting mila ni Chadara mo ngayon kulin ni. Yal jingko like China pun buwan ni bin.
Oh, but jamu kami ko ungko ja cukur pala ja.
Kami ko nga nang pacukur warni karing ana na palanta ko palal karing jak cukarong ko pala kulera wana dako yaji ko nga na palal ko palo like ngayon pa ina mel pa ngayon ko na pa cukur pa minungal kulel pa yaji pa nyangara ni yaji wanong ko ngure ni anaji.
So Teresa says for every time she starts a painting, she's following the footsteps that were laid down by her grandparents, and that's where that lineage is, that song line. But the rainbow serpents, the Pleiades, which is the Seven Sisters, the Haniat painting, which Yarachi has done behind us. That's all family sort of ancestral stories, that the Jukurpa lines that the ladies, the artists draw. And that's what they bring to it. And I think Teresa was just saying, for her, she just goes. She goes and she knows which way to follow. She'll have a think sometimes, but she knows. Realigns herself again.
Well, I think I turned my mic off. I think with that, I think we should. Oh, we have. Yeah.
The photograph of Mumu Mike standing with the post office bag. I was wondering, because it's so rare when it rains out in the outback, if that was water coming off the mountains behind.
Well, I can. This one here.
Oh, yeah.
That's rare, right?
Yep, that's water.
How often does it rain here?
Well, with climate change, we can't really know now, can we? It sort of depends on which sort of area of the lands. I mean, the APY lands is 102,000 square kilometres. So we're bigger than some European countries, and just as a region in Australia. I mean, in Menil, it maybe rains 3 or 4 times a year. Yeah.
So it's really rare for this photo.
Yeah.
Well, I think we'll be around. Sally will be around all week. So please feel free to come up to any of us during your tour through the exhibition and ask questions. And we welcome all of you to enjoy Mapa Wiya, Your Map's Not Needed. So thank you very much.
Yeah, he was